This is a castle located in the center of Aalborg. It's actually right on the waterfront, so you see back there those buildings, those are on the fjord. It's actually really nice looking with the snow here. Now, whether or not this is actually a castle is kind of debatable, because technically a castle is a fortified residence, and well, I believe this was at one point a residence for the royal family. I'm not too certain how fortified this actually is, but if you look around behind me, I'm actually standing on a bit of a rampart, so excuse the kids in the background. So I'm standing on a raised hill here, so I imagine this would have allowed some fortification, and there's some walls back there as well. But I believe this was a residence of one of the royal families or something. And you notice the design typical of late medieval Europe. I believe it's actually some type of apartment complex right now. Or maybe it's just kept as a historic building. And on the front you can see Anno 1633, which would have been when this building was built. You can actually also see a very interesting weather vane up there. But I really like the white and red design of this building. And if the snow wasn't on the roof, it's actually a stone brickwork roof, so a gray stone roof there, gray stone tiles. And you can see here there's actually a tugboat in the harbor. But I'm on one of the ramparts, which would have acted as a defense for this supposed castle. And this is interesting. You can see these woodworks sticking out of the walls. Those are probably the supports for the floors of the second floor of the building. And you can see across here on the other side, I'm standing on one of the side mounds of the building, which would have been used for defense, and there's a second earthworks mound on the other side. So that would have provided, I guess, defenses for the flanks. But what's kind of curious is the harbor's right here, and there's a completely flat ground from the harbor to the building, so I'm not really sure what type of defense that would offer. I mean, I guess this would have been a flat side wall, and I imagine that during the time when this was actually a castle or fortress, they probably would have had cannons or something of that nature in the windows of the castle facing the harbor. And here you can see the earthwork mounds in front of the castle. So you can see they're actually quite high and quite steep, so they would have provided at least some defense. And it actually was quite difficult getting up to the top of them in the snow. But this is the harbor side of the fortress, so the harbor would have been, harbor's located right behind there. There's the tugboat. And you can see this ditch is actually going all the way along the side of the castle. So here's the front of the castle, so the side facing the harbor. And you notice the windows probably weren't there back when this was a real castle. But if you notice the wooden shutters on the top, I imagine that they could have been used as cannon ports. So think about something like US Civil War forts. And also I notice all of those, you can see if I can get a better zoom of it. All of these mountings right here. I'm not really sure what they would have been for. Maybe they were some type of mounting for hoarding, or maybe they're just there for decoration. I'm not completely sure. Also over there is what would be the sally point for the castle, so the doorway for the castle. It's nothing compared to medieval gatehouses, but it does seem like it would at least be a very basic fortification. And for castles that will be facing gunpowder, you don't need the massive giant gatehouses. And there's one of the earthen mounds as well. And looking into the salliway, it actually does look like this would have been somewhat defensible. So right now it has these wooden doors, but at some point, if you notice this up here, maybe at some point that would have been a bracing for some type of fortified doors, maybe even an iron gate or something of that nature. But just looking how deep this is and how long it is, this would have been rather difficult for attacking forces to actually get into. And here we have what would have been the courthouse of this castle. And that there actually looks like it could have been some type of stable or some type of supply depot. So from in here, it actually looks like parts of it are resembling a fortress. Obviously, this part here is completely a residence right now. And one other thing I noticed are these brackets here. So there's this metal bracket here, and then looks like there's a hinge over there and another hinge down there. So this would have at one point held some type of fortified door, and then there's another one over there. So there would have been multiple different doors that you have to go through to get into the courtyard of this castle. There's also this side door here. I'm not completely sure what that is. Maybe it's some type of like salad point. Maybe it's something they added later. Although looking at the ingress here, it looks like it was something that was part of the original building. This is the side of the castle. So I'm on one of the earthworks right now. And this would have been the back of the residential area. There's a door to the castle, and actually if you look up here, you see these 4 windows. They actually look like it could have been cannon ports at one time. And I'm actually facing, my back's turned to the entrance to the harbor, so these cannons here would have provided defense of the entrance of the harbor, so any ships that were coming into Aalborg Harbor would have been in the range of these cannons here. You can also see another ornate weather rod up there. And another thing that's interesting is if you come over here, you can actually see some of the tile work. So this is what the roof of this building is. It's made of these stone tiles. And here's a view into the courtyard of the castle from the ramparts. And that building back there looks like it would have been the stables or one of the depots of this castle. And you can see some of the residential buildings in front of them. And here's the back of that residential portion I showed you earlier.